Being a boxer was always my only option. I wasn't fast enough for school, nor clever enough for business. But I knew how to fight. I knew how to throw a punch. My career had its ups and downs, more downs than UPS, but that night they offered me a fight with a sum of money I couldn't refuse. I didn't care if it was illegal or that the place was so far from the city it looked like a forgotten dump. I just wanted to settle my debt and get out for good. My trainer, a tough man who had seen more illegal fights than legal ones, acted strange when he confirmed the offer. "Listen, kid, this fight is different. It's not like the others, but the money is good. Very good." "What do you mean different?" I asked while rolling a cigarette. He gave me a forced smile, hands trembling slightly. Nothing. Just, look, the guys organizing this aren't, from the boxing world. But trust me, it's a one-time opportunity. You fight once and you're set for life." It all sounded strange. I'm a street-hardened guy, but suddenly I felt uneasy. "I'm not liking this, old man. How dangerous is this?" He took a deep breath, lowering his voice. "I can't say more. I'm not allowed. I can't tell you anything until right before the fight. Look, do you want to get out of this life once and for all or not?" "Of course," I replied, making a firm gesture. "Then do what I say and everything will turn out fine," he said, turning his back and walking away quickly but heavily. The fight location was a massive, ruined warehouse, filled with shadows that seemed to move on their own. Outside, the parked cars were luxurious, the kind you wouldn't see in my neighborhood. The guards weren't the typical bar thugs. These guys carried weapons I hadn't even seen in movies. Inside, the crowd was restless. There was something in their eyes, something dark and hungry. It felt like they weren't just there for the fight, but for something more, something I couldn't understand. They took me to an improvised locker room, dirty and damp. There was barely any light, but in the middle of the gloom, on an old rusty chair, there was an envelope. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a worn piece of paper with 12 handwritten rules. I recognized my trainer's handwriting. "These rules are your only chance to get out of here. Break one and what you'll lose won't just be the fight. Rule 1, don't stop moving. The fight has no rounds, no breaks. No matter how tired you get, don't stop moving. If you stay still for more than 5 seconds, the crowd will notice and they have bets placed. Rule 2, don't look at the doctors. If you see men in white coats and briefcases among the spectators, change your position and try to keep your opponent between you and them. You don't want to know what they're doing here, much less let them examine you. Rule 3, avoid being knocked down in the first 10 minutes. During the first 10 minutes, focus on not getting knocked down by your opponent. If you fall before that time, what's under the ring will still be awake. Rule 4, be careful of deep cuts. If you get seriously injured and see blood flowing, don't let anyone from the crowd get close. Don't let anyone touch your wound. Rule 5. Never take off your gloves outside the ring. Before the fight, they'll offer to let you take off your gloves to rest. Don't do it. Hands are the first thing they check, and they're not looking for calluses or bruises. Rule 6. Don't accept the water they offer you between rounds. After the first round, someone will approach with a water bottle that isn't from your team. Don't drink it. Rule 7. Hear but don't listen. During the fight, you'll hear strange things in the distance. The sound of bones breaking when no one's been hit, children crying, voices pleading or moaning in pain. Ignore them. Rule 8. Don't touch the money. If you win, don't take the money right away. If they give it to you in the black bag, ask them to hand it to your trainer and get out as fast as you can. Rule 9. If you see red lights, close your eyes. At some point during the fight, the ring lights might turn red. If that happens, close your eyes for 10 seconds no matter what. If the lights stay red when you open them, jump out of the ring and run toward the exit as fast as you can. Rule 10. Don't let yourself lose. Losing here isn't an option. If you get knocked out and can't get up before you count to 10 in your head, it'll be too late for you. Rule 11. Don't keep fighting after the 3rd round if you hear an extra bell. The fight is fixed to last 3 rounds, but if you hear a 4th bell, stop immediately. Get out of the ring and sit at the judge's table. That signal isn't for you, it's for the buyers. If you keep fighting after that bell, you're no longer in a boxing match. You're being auctioned. Rule 12. Win but don't knock out your opponent. They don't want the fight to end too quickly. If you knock him out, they'll realize you're stronger than they're looking for, and you'll become the final trophy. But if you leave him standing, even if he's wobbling, they'll keep their attention on the other guy. Rule 13. The man with the red mask. If during the fight you see a man in the front row wearing a red mask, fight for your life even if you have to break all the other rules. None is more important than this one. P.S. Your opponent also received these rules. Don't forget that. I froze, staring at the list. This wasn't just a fight. It was a hunt, and I was the prey. A suited man appeared again and led me to the ring. My legs were shaking, but I couldn't afford to hesitate. I felt the eyes of the audience on my skin as if they were already deciding which part of me was worth more. The fight began. My opponent was strong, but something in him seemed broken. He wasn't fighting to win, he was fighting for his life. I kept the rules in mind as we exchanged blows. The audience's eyes never left us, watching every move with a hunger that went beyond mere entertainment. There was something twisted in their smiles, in the way they clapped each time one of us took a hard hit. Between rounds, a guy from the crowd threw me a bottle of water. I remembered the third rule. My throat was dry, but I ignored the temptation. I also heard muffled cries and children's sobs coming from somewhere far off, in the opposite direction of the exit, but I didn't pay attention. The referee got closer than usual during the second round. I felt his breath on my ear when he whispered, "You shouldn't be here." I refused to respond. I knew what interacting with him meant. I moved away and continued the fight. The bell rang, signaling the end of the third round. But something was wrong. I heard another bell, a fourth one. The crowd started murmuring like something grand was about to happen. I remembered the sixth rule and stood still. My opponent, unaware, moved toward me, but I stepped away. The murmurs turned into low laughter. They knew. Finally, the last round came. My opponent could barely stand, but I couldn't knock him out. I had to leave him on his feet. I hit just enough to keep control, but not enough to drop him. The crowd seemed unsatisfied, but they ignored me completely now. Their attention was fixed on my opponent, evaluating him as if they were making decisions. Decisions that had nothing to do with boxing. The final bell rang and I won. But I didn't feel relief. I looked around, and for a second I saw something that chilled me to the bone. In the front row, a man with a baby-faced red mask dressed in white was sitting, leaning forward, watching. Suddenly he stood, approached my opponent's corner, and pulled a jar of what looked like powder from his pocket, sprinkling it on the ground. Then he pulled a red handkerchief from another pocket, tied it to one of the ring ropes, and walked away. My opponent sat dazed and slumped on his stool until one of the men in white coats, with fully tattooed arms, came over, whispered something to him, and they walked toward a room opposite the exit. I left the ring quickly, not waiting for my payment. I knew it wasn't safe to stay. The guards looked at me, but none stopped me. The feeling of danger clung to my skin like cold sweat. That was my last fight. I never put the gloves on again. I knew I had barely escaped. But sometimes in the dark of my room, I feel the audience's eyes on me, waiting. And I can't help but wonder how much longer it will be until they come to claim what they believe belongs to them.